Number 1.
Jesse Ross was a 19-year-old sophomore attending the University of Missouri. Ross was attending the 2005 Model United Nations in Chicago and woke up his father on Saturday, November 18, 2006. Jesse was one of 1,200 students who attended the conference in Chicago. The locations where the students were staying had 3 different locations, with Jesse staying at the Four Points Sheraton with 14 other classmates in different rooms. Jesse's roommate Ralph Parker, a friend who had gone to the same high school as him and were both very close friends. On Monday, Jesse and Ralph went to the Hard Rock Cafe and returned in time to the Sheraton Chicago for 6 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. event. Jesse joined the group heading back to their rooms since they had a meeting at 2:30 a.m. The meeting was meant to simulate an emergency meeting which happened in 1990. Jesse, after the meeting session ended, joined a group of students at 10 p.m. in a hotel room. With these group of students, despite a ban of alcohol at the conference, the rule was often ignored. One student was so drunk they were not able to find their way back to the assigned room and fell asleep in the hallway where attendees found them. When 12:30 came around, most students began heading back to the Sheraton Chicago to attend the dance. On security cameras at 12:43 a.m., Jesse is seen leaving the Four Points Sheraton with a plastic bottle on hand. Jesse is not seen again till 1:09 a.m., and it's not clear if he stopped to grab another drink or talk with someone, since it only takes 15 minutes to walk from Four Points Sheraton to the Sheraton Chicago. Jesse entered where the dance was, and students who took photos while in the dance later showed Jesse smiling with a Powerade bottle. Sadly, people failed to realize the bottle was actually filled with a vodka cocktail. Jesse left the party 20 minutes later and went to the 8th floor using an elevator, where he went to another hotel party with students from another school and showed up around 1:30 a.m., where he continued drinking till it was time for the meeting. Ralph was already waiting for Jesse when it started. According to witnesses, it looked like Jesse needed help walking and seemed drunk, while Ralph said Jesse was coherent but did not say anything during the meeting. At 2:50 a.m., Jesse whispered something to Ralph which he didn't hear what was said to him as Jesse got up and left the room. Ralph tried to get clarification from Jesse but was too late as Jesse had left the room. Ralph thought at the time Jesse was just going to use the restroom. Outside the room the meeting was taking place, another student witnessed Jesse. They noticed that he seemed inebriated while seeing that Jesse's eyes were red and that he was slurring his words. Jesse, when confronted by the students, said he was just going outside to get some fresh air, but this was the last time anyone saw Jesse alive. The meeting ended at 5:30 a.m. as Ralph went back to his room, and due to the dim light he thought a pile of clothes on Jesse's bed was actually Jesse. Ralph woke up at 10 a.m. and saw it was actually a pile of clothes, but was not concerned, thinking Jesse had crashed and was sleeping somewhere else. Ralph tried to reach Jesse by calling his phone, which went straight to voicemail, before Ralph and other classmates began to get worried and started knocking on doors looking for Jesse. Derek Moorhead, the faculty member accompanying Ralph, Jesse, and their colleagues, called security at 1:30 p.m. Detectives came to the hotel at 4 p.m. and with most of the 1,200 students having already left to head back to where they came from, it was already too late to ask for witnesses. During the search of rooms, no sign of foul play was found, but the authorities were worried since they knew Jesse was drunk and likely could have fallen into the Chicago River. Derek stayed in Chicago and spent 12 hours searching the streets of Chicago for Jesse. On Wednesday, police and fire departments sent divers to search the water area along with searching just 10 feet off the entry point. Despite a search, they found trash and traffic cones, yet no sign that Jesse was even in the water. Detectives would reach out to students, which helped to establish a timeline of when Jesse went missing. This was very difficult since this happened just a few days before Thanksgiving, which caused colleges to close. The students were reluctant to speak with police since alcohol was involved in the parties, which made the situation even harder. Detectives could not find any footage of Jesse leaving the hotel, so they theorized he left through the back door, which does not have any security footage. This was also not Jesse's first conference. He had attended the MNU conference the year prior and during was mugged at knife point and had his camera stolen. When Jesse's family flew to assist in the search, they were given news a body was found in the river, which was later determined not to be Jesse. Detectives also theorized that Jesse's body could have ended up in Lake Michigan, which was later proven to be impossible since the floodgates never opened. It was also proven with the help of Ralph Parker Jesse had not gone out the back door of the hotel, instead likely having used the stair which was adjacent to the conference room and also led to the parking lot, which had a camera but wasn't facing the way to Jesse's hotel. Detectives later tried to follow up with raves since Jesse was interested in becoming a DJ and wanted some tips. The possibility is that he went to an illegal rave held in an abandoned building, since the CD discs and flyer he had to promote his band were missing as well. At these raves, had he accepted something, since he had alcohol in his system, it likely could have also led to his death as the result of an overdose. Somehow Jesse did not appear on cameras outside of the hotel, and his last phone ping was at 3:30 a.m., less than an hour after he disappeared. To this day, Jesse's parents haven't given up hope that they will find out the truth of what happened to him. In 2019, a film called When I Last Saw Jesse was released and is a documentary behind the disappearance of Jesse, which covers the last of Jesse's movements. Jesse was last seen was that he was wearing blue jeans, a white t-shirt, a green jacket, and black sneakers. If you have information, call the Chicago Police Department at 312-744-8266. Theory 1. Mugging gone wrong. Like the year prior, when Jesse got mugged, it's a possibility he might have been mugged while drunk. Possibly the person could have taken his flyer and CDs to sell and then killed Jesse after he tried to run or scream help, and the killer then disposed of his body somehow. This is also likely not proven, since no credit cards have been used, meaning something else occurred. Theory 1. Falling into the river. Possibly Jesse could have fallen in the river, but it's unlikely since his body was never found 2 days after the search. Theory 2. Foul play. If Jesse had gone to an illegal rave, Jesse could have possibly fallen victim to some sort of foul play. Jesse could have been given a drug by someone which caused him to overdose due to being drunk, and his body was left in the location and still hasn't been found, or his body was disposed of somewhere else. It may even be possible he fell victim to students who killed him and then disposed of the body. Theory 3. Wandered into the wrong area. It is possible that Jesse could have wandered into the wrong part of Chicago, such as entering gang territory and falling victim to being murdered. Theory 4. Abducted. It is possibly Jesse could have been abducted, and the person who abducted him likely killed him shortly after doing so.
Number 2.
42-year-old Randa Jawhari was last seen at her residence in the 3400 block of Shiawassee Avenue in Fenton, Michigan on February 11, 2009. Randa was 42 years old when she disappeared from her apartment in the 3400 block of Shiawassee Avenue in Fenton, a quarter of a mile east of US 23. She spoke to her sister on the phone at 11:30 p.m. that evening and stated she was going to bed. She hasn't been seen or heard from since. The apartment building's surveillance camera doesn't show her in the parking lot during the night of February 11 or the early morning hours of February 12. Randa suffers from bipolar disorder and depression. She requires medication and is considered to be legally incapacitated. At the time of her disappearance, Randa's mother Anis Jawhari was caring for Randa's daughter. After dropping Randa's daughter off at school, Randa's mother drove to her apartment to check on her, but Randa was gone. The front door was left open, but nothing was missing from inside the home. There were no signs of struggle or foul play inside the apartment. Randa's coat, identification, and cigarettes were found inside. Her bed didn't appear to have been slept in, as Randa's clothes that her mother had picked out for her the day before were still laid out on the bed. After Randa was reported missing, police searched the roadways, fields, and forests within a 4-mile radius of her apartment, but came up empty. Randa didn't have a cell phone, vehicle, or driver's license at the time of her disappearance. She walked or relied on others for transportation. Fenton police had been in contact with Randa on February 10, the day before she disappeared. At 10 a.m. that morning they were called when a report came in stating Randa was wandering around and asking for money at the Owen Road McDonald's restaurant. After responding, a police officer drove her back to her apartment. Police have followed multiple leads over the years, but the case has since grown cold with no new or active leads. Her case remains unsolved. Randa was born on 6/2/1966. She stands 5'1" and weighs 100 pounds. She has brown hair and eyes and is of Lebanese descent. She has a C-section scar on her abdomen and pierced ears. Some of her molars are missing, and she wears a partial dental bridge. She was last known to be wearing a blue bathrobe and a brown jacket with white sleeves and collar. If you have any information regarding Randa Jawhari's disappearance, please contact the Fenton Police Department at 810-629-5311 or Crime Stoppers of Michigan at 1-800-SPEAK-UP. Crime Stoppers is offering a cash reward of up to $2,500 for information that leads to the arrest of the person or persons responsible.
Number 3.
On August 10, 1989, Rosa Glover took her 1-year-old son Shane Walker to the park across the street from the housing complex where they lived. Rosa was sitting on a bench at the park with Shane when she was approached by two children, a 10-year-old girl and her 5-year-old brother, asking if they could play with him. She agreed and watched as the children played on the slide. Shortly after, an unidentified man sat down next to Rosa and began talking to her. He spoke about crime, mentioned kidnapping, and pointed out scars he had that he attributed to fighting. After speaking to the man briefly, Rosa turned around and Shane was gone, as well as the two children he had been playing with. The two children Shane had been playing with came back to the park a short time later and stated that they'd left Shane in the park. She immediately contacted the New York Police Department, who began a search of the area. Investigators questioned the children Shane had been playing with and interviewed the man who'd spoken to Shane's mother on the bench. Shane's case remains unsolved. Chris Dansby and Shane Walker were cheerful and very close with their mothers. Chris disappeared in May 1989, and Shane disappeared in August of the same year. Because both cases were eerily familiar with one another, it led the police to wonder if the same perpetrator took them. When Rosa Glover took her eyes off of her son Shane for a split second, it was like he had vanished into thin air. Similarly, when Allison Dansby left Chris with her mother, the same situation happened in the same fashion. It takes an incredibly evil type of person to swipe children right from under the supervision of their loved ones. According to Chief Ronald J. Fenrich, who was the deputy at the time, someone who wants a baby who is not qualified to adopt a baby might steal a baby or hire someone to do so. While the two children missing remain a mystery, police say they still get tips, especially after releasing age progression photos. The same year the children went missing, the well-known series Unsolved Mysteries premiered. The show covered several missing children cases, and Chris Dansby and Shane Walker were the subjects of the final episode of the revamped 2020 Netflix series. Although the episode covered many vital details of both cases, they did leave an essential piece of information out. We know Chris and Shane disappeared in 1989, but many people don't know that they both went missing on a Thursday evening. Is there a significance to this particular day of the week, or was it pure coincidence? For now, no one knows. According to the Charlie Project, a website that profiles over 14,000 cold cases, there are similar cases that might have significant correlations between the Harlem, New York cases. In March 1989, 25-year-old Monique Rivera was approached by two women who were particularly interested in her 2-month-old son Andre Terrence Bryant. After shopping and corresponding with each other, Rivera grew to trust the two women. Unfortunately, on March 30, Rivera's body was found by Eastchester Bay, near City Island Road in the Bronx. She was found with defensive wounds on her body, and her son Andre was nowhere to be found. The mysterious women were heard from the last time, when one of them called the Rivera home a day after the murder. One of the women was reportedly baffled when the receiver informed her Rivera was deceased, as she had just gone shopping with her a day before. From that point on, the two women who befriended Rivera were never heard from or seen again. The disappearance of Andre has never been solved, but hopefully, the case won't stay cold forever. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Shane Walker, please call the New York Police Department 646-610-6914 or the Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST.
Number 4.
Michael Vanzandt was an Air Force veteran who worked at the Edwards Air Force Base as a unit training manager. While on an Air Force assignment in Japan, Michael met Shane and the couple exchanged vows in 2001. Their union gave way to 3 wonderful children, Keaton, Jaden, and Kylie. Unfortunately, his marriage did not last, and the couple decided to separate in 2014. Still, Michael was an extremely dedicated father, and his children meant the world to him. Around the time of his disappearance, he was co-parenting his children with his ex-wife and also planning to move into a new home. On March 5, 2016, Michael drove from his Lancaster home to Hermosa Beach, where he met his friends at a bar. After 10 p.m. on that night, the group of friends, along with Michael, moved to the beach's Pier Plaza, which held a multitude of bars and restaurants. Here, while the group was waiting in line to get into a bar, Michael excused himself and told his friends that he would be going to the liquor store next door to use the washroom. This was the last anyone ever saw or heard from the father of 3. His friends grew increasingly worried when Michael did not return from his washroom trip. Even calls and messages to his cell phone were going unanswered. On their way back home, the friends saw that Michael's car was still in the parking lot of the first bar that they visited. When numerous calls to hospitals, police stations, and jail could not locate Michael, his friends sensed danger. Furthermore, the dedicated father even missed his son's dentist appointment, which was very unlike him. Worried, Michael's ex-wife and friends even discovered that Michael hadn't turned up for work since the night he went missing. His house too lay untouched, and nothing pointed towards him leaving in a hurry. When the police got involved in the missing person case, they tried to check Michael's cell phone records and confirmed that the phone was dead throughout the evening. Authorities also decided to check CCTV footage of the area to retrace Michael's last steps. Upon reviewing the security video, the police discovered that Michael had gone off on his washroom break and then roamed around the pier for quite some time, looking for his friends. With his phone being dead, there was no way for him to contact his friends and ask them about their location. The footage also showed him going back to the liquor store, where he bought an object the police couldn't identify. Ultimately, Mike was last seen on the footage at 11:27 p.m., where the police saw him walking through the Mermaid parking lot in the northeast direction. Determined to find out Michael's whereabouts, the police used every search technique in their arsenal. Michael's phone, as well as his credit and debit cards, were never used since the disappearance. Sniffer dogs used in the search lost Michael's smell near the liquor store, and repeated searches of the beach and surrounding areas failed to give authorities even a single hint about the disappearance. According to the show, even the Air Force and the Coast Guard ran a separate investigation into the disappearance, but came up empty-handed. Michael Vanzandt remains missing to this very day. However, his family had never given up hope and have kept up their search efforts. For Michael's family, and especially his children, his disappearance has been a harrowing experience that ultimately strengthened their familial bond. According to California law, a missing person's family can take on the process to declare the person legally dead only after they have been missing for 5 years. When Michael's family passed that milestone in March 2021, they started the heartbreaking and painful process of declaring Michael dead. Still, they have not gotten over the excruciating grief and emptiness that engulfed the whole family after the father of 3's disappearance. Michael Vanzandt is terribly missed to this very day.
Number 5.
Throughout his investigation into the 2016 disappearance of Kristal Reisinger, Up and Vanished podcast host Payne Lindsay kept coming across one name, John Keenan, a man who goes by the moniker Catfish John. Reisinger met Catfish, who has never been charged in connection with her case, when she moved to the small town of Keystone, Colorado, in search of spiritual enlightenment. Her boyfriend at the time, Dreddy Bryan, introduced her to Catfish as well as Nathan Peliquin, whom she started dating in 2015 after breaking up with Brian. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, both Pelican and Catfish reported seeing Reisinger, with Catfish telling investigators she came over to his house around his birthday, July 21, and that the two smoked marijuana and drank wine. While Reisinger was not reported missing until July 30, the last time loved ones heard from her was on July 14, a week earlier. Her former boyfriend, Elijah Guana, told Up and Vanished that she called him nearly every day to speak their 4-year-old daughter, Kasha, and it was unnatural not to hear from her. It was also reported that she was seen at a full moon drum circle ceremony on July 18, but it has not been confirmed. There's some timelines that aren't being matched up with it, Saguenay County Sheriff Dan Warwick told Up and Vanished, airing Saturdays at 7/6 on Oxygen. It makes it harder to be able to track every step that she took during that time. Before she went missing, Reisinger told multiple people, including Guana and Pelican, that she had been drugged and raped. She told Guana she knew 2 of the men who assaulted her, but she did not recognize other men who were there. She also told Pelican that it happened at Catfish's house. In an interview with the podcast, Pelican recounted picking Reisinger up after the alleged attack. She called me on June 28, and I took care of her for like the next 2 weeks because I never seen her that scared. And I told her like to go to the police, Pelican said. She told me that he held her there. He wouldn't let her leave. It was a couple weeks before she went missing. Catfish denied any type of assault took place at his home, telling Lindsay, "Why would I hurt the girl? I barely knew her." Reisinger never reported the alleged rape to law enforcement, and 2 weeks later, she vanished. When family came searching for the 29-year-old at her apartment, they found she had left behind several personal items, including her cell phone, computer, and clothing. The front door was locked, and there was no sign of a struggle. Our theory is that Kristal was going to report the rape to police or confront the men about it, and then she was murdered on or around July 14, when she went off the radar, Lindsay said. While the podcast has reignited public interest in Reisinger's case and led to national media attention, no arrests have been made in connection to her disappearance. In the years following, Catfish left Keystone, and his house was reportedly cleared out. According to the police, Catfish had gutted his house out and cleaned everything, bleached everything, got rid of all of his computers, and got rid of all kinds of stuff, Guana said. A search warrant was not issued for his home, said the sheriff's office. During an interview with the podcast, Catfish claimed Brian sent him a message on Facebook admitting that he had killed Reisinger. Catfish says he took a screenshot of the conversation, which he has refused to share with the Up and Vanish team. He also denied that he was protecting Brian, who has never been charged in Reisinger's disappearance, from legal prosecution, telling Lindsay in an on-camera interview that he hopes Reisinger is alive and well. Catfish went on to maintain that she had not been drugged or shot inside his house. When asked why he thought that Reisinger had told Pelican she had been raped there, he responded, "First of all, I don't know this, and because she was probably cheating on him as her boyfriend. And that's my guess is she was probably scared of him, cause he's a creepy ass kid." Catfish continues to deny having anything to do with her disappearance. Reisinger remains missing, and her family is still searching for answers. If you have any information in connection to the case, please call the sheriff's office at 719-655-2525.
Number 6.
21-year-old Matthew Weaver Jr. was last seen in Simi Valley, California on August 10, 2018. He was captured on video heading towards Rose's Overlook at 7:15 a.m. and sent a text to a friend just before noon, stating something crazy was happening and that he wanted to talk. Matthew hasn't been seen or heard from since. Matthew Weaver was last seen on August 10, 2018 in the 2600 block of Stearns Street in Simi Valley, California. He was seen on surveillance video at approximately 7:15 a.m. driving his silver BMW on the Topanga Tower motorway headed toward Rose's Overlook. He sent a text message to a friend at approximately 11:55 a.m., stating something crazy was happening and he wanted to talk while I have the chance. The text was sent from the Los Roses Overlook area in the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. He was never seen or heard from again. Just after midnight on August 11, the day after Matthew disappeared, hikers reported hearing a man and woman calling for help in the area, where surveillance footage captured Matthew's car. During their search for the people reportedly in need of help, police found Matthew's abandoned car on the Topanga Tower motorway, near Rose's Overlook above the Backbone Trail and Hondo Canyon areas. In January of 2019, hikers found the keys to Matthew's car 25 feet from where the vehicle had been found. Aerial photographs taken by a drone high above the Santa Monica Mountain Wilderness area were released by Matthew's family in January of 2019. Those images helped his family recover a baseball cap and ripped T-shirt that are believed to be Matthew's. The Los Angeles Police Department are investigating Matthew's case, which remains unsolved. According to reports from some of Matthew's friends, he had suffered a head injury shortly before his disappearance. They believe that injury may have affected his behavior. He had moved into an apartment in the Granada Hills shortly before he went missing and had gotten a job working on power lines. Matthew's whereabouts are currently unknown. The circumstances regarding his disappearance are unclear, and his case remains unsolved. Caucasian male born April 2, 1997. He stands 5'93" tall, weighs 140 pounds, and has brown hair and eyes. Matthew was last known to be wearing a plain black or white t-shirt, black Dickies pants, red shoes and a Los Angeles Angels baseball cap. He has a tattoo of the name Jeremiah on the left side of his chest. If you have any information regarding Matthew Weaver's disappearance, please contact the Los Angeles Police Department at 877-275-5273.
Number 7.
Nancy Moyer was 36 years old and had been working for the Department of Ecology as a financial analyst in Washington for about 12 years. Nancy had 2 daughters who, at the time, were aged 11 and 9 years, with her estranged husband, Bill Moyer. They had an amicable separation in 2007 and shared the custody of their daughters. Nancy had them during the weekdays and he had them during the weekends. When Bill came by to drop off the kids on March 8, 2009, Nancy wasn't at home, and unfortunately, she would never return. Nancy was last seen on March 6, 2009, when she stopped by to pick up a few things at a store on her way back from work. Her door was ajar upon Bill's arrival, and nothing of value was missing from the house. Her car was still parked in the driveway, and her purse and other belongings were at home. With no signs of a robbery or a struggle at the place, the authorities didn't have a lot to go on. People were questioned, but there weren't a lot of credible leads. The authorities had stated that Nancy didn't have any history of mental issues, drug use, or any financial struggles. At the house, the TV was still on, and there was a glass of wine along with another empty glass. The glasses were dusted for fingerprints, but there were no matches apart from Nancy's. The police also stated that Nancy had been in a few relationships since her separation, but none of them were considered suspects. The case eventually went cold. It was only in 2019 that the case saw renewed attention because of someone called Eric Lee Roberts. Eric was Nancy's neighbor and co-worker. It was reported that, before she had gone missing, Nancy had dated Eric's nephew. In his initial interview in May 2009, Eric had denied that Nancy had met his nephew at his place multiple times. He also stated that he had a good relationship with Nancy as a colleague. But on July 9, 2019, Eric had allegedly called 911 to confess to Nancy's killing. According to the police, he later told them that he had killed Nancy and had offered to provide a recorded statement. In the emotional recording, Eric stated that he killed her after she had attacked him somewhere near the Chehalis River in Washington state. He had also admitted to an alleged sexual relationship between them. According to the detectives, Eric had asked to stop the recording at some point, after which he offered up a different story. He was more relaxed and stated that he had killed Nancy at his place. The authorities stated that he had claimed to have accidentally strangled her with a scarf during sex. After that, Eric allegedly stated that if he were to get rid of a body on his property, it would be right there, and pointed to a fire pit. He also mentioned that Nancy's clothing was still in his basement but that he had burned the scarf. As the police acquired a warrant to search his property, he recanted his confession in another interview just a day later. However, he was still held on probable cause of second-degree murder. The prosecutors didn't file a formal murder charge in the end. Eric was later arrested on federal weapons charges as a result of finding firearms in his house that were in violation of state law. But these charges were dropped, and on July 18, 2019, he was released. He was arrested again on suspicion of domestic violence. These charges were dropped as well, and Eric was eventually released. Later the same year, Eric agreed to appear on a podcast that was looking into the disappearance of Nancy Moyer. In that interview, Eric stated that he did not remember confessing to the police and in the 911 call, and mentioned that the medication that he was taking could be the reason for that. Eric also went on to state that the part about the scarf was something that he had never said. When asked about his conversation regarding the fire pit, he said that it was regarding his own cremation. As per the latest reports, authorities have stated that Eric was still a person of interest in the case and that it was still an active investigation. In the meantime, Eric was freed and his house was released back to him. Beyond that, not much is known about his current whereabouts.
Number 8.
45-year-old John Michael Spira was last seen on February 23, 2007 in West Chicago, Illinois. He was last seen around 7 p.m. at his workplace, Universal Cable Construction, near North Avenue and Country Farm Road. On the morning of the day he disappeared, John met with his estranged wife to discuss their divorce settlement. Later that day he went to his office for their weekly office barbecue. At 7:09 p.m. John called a friend to make dinner plans for 8:30 p.m. in Oak Brook, but he never showed up. No one reported seeing him leave the office that evening, and his truck was found still in the parking lot. John's girlfriend Renata tried calling him several times that night, but he never picked up. She called the police that night to file a missing persons report, but police wouldn't take it because she wasn't a relative. His estranged wife, Suzanne, ended up filing a missing person report on February 25. After the missing persons report was filed, St. Charles Police and DuPage County Sheriff's detectives brought cadaver dogs to John's business where he was last seen. Some of John's employees reported that a large roll of plastic wrap went missing from the company's property, but it is unclear whether it's connected to John's disappearance. Authorities say Spira was one of only 2 or 3 people at Universal Cable the night of his disappearance. His cell's phone was active until 11 p.m. that evening and utilized the same towers as it had earlier in the day. According to the DuPage County Sheriff's Office, Spira's business partner, David Stubben, was among the last people seen with John. Stubben reportedly told the police that he saw John talking with a vendor, Daniel Bernadette, when he left for the evening around 7 p.m. Bernadette claims he left before Spira and Stubben. Another vendor who was at the office that evening, Anthony DiStefano, reportedly told police that Stubben and Spira were the only 2 left at the business when he left that evening. Stubben and Spira were having serious financial issues at the time of Spira's disappearance, according to the family's blog at johnspira.com. In September of 2007, John's business, Universal Cable Construction, was destroyed by a fire. Spira's family believes the fire was intentional and related to his disappearance. Since he went missing, none of John's credit cards or bank accounts have been used, and there were no indications of foul play found at his home, office or vehicle. Investigators consider John's disappearance suspicious, but they haven't named any suspects. John's estranged wife Suzanne died at her home in New York in October of 2010. John, also known as Chicago Johnny, played guitar with the Rabble Rousers blues band at the time of his disappearance. He owned his own business, Universal Cable Construction, and had a pilot's license and regularly flew out of the DuPage Airport, where he helped run a venture called Flight Matrix. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of John Michael Spira, please contact the St. Charles Police Department at 630-407-2333.